welcome. Slow Food Live is a project of Slow Food USA. We started Slow Food Live when stay at home and shelter at home orders were put in place as a way to bring slow food into your home. And it's been really fun and really positive and a great way to cultivate conversations with diverse groups of people around the country about topics and values that we care about in the slow food movement. If you're not familiar with Slow Food or the Slow Food USA network, Slow Food USA is a nonprofit. It began in Italy 30 years ago, and we advocate for good, clean, and fair food for all. Obviously, there's many layers and dimensions to that mission, and we, with the support and work and time and energy of our very vast network across the country, are involved in many projects, many initiatives, and a lot of work towards the goal of good, clean, and fair food for all. So today we have Peter Ruddick and Joni Sare with us. Peter Ruddick is a member of the Arc of Taste Committee, a long-time slow food person, I think in many different roles and ways. And Joni Sare is a chef and a slow food member in California. And I'm just going to go ahead and hand this over to Peter. I would love for Peter and Joni to tell you more about themselves. And then we're going to sort of meet the Elberta peach and the Masumoto family and learn more about this wonderful fruit. So Peter, I'll send it over to you. Thank you so much to both of you for being here with us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Giselle. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I am Peter Ruddick. I am the current president of Slow Food California. We're one of two regional or umbrella chapters, the other one being New York. We have about 22 active regional chapters. There's one here in the South Bay. We're sitting in Sunnyvale, California today. And they do different things. Sometimes we come together to work on larger projects. Slow food chapters like to convene. The California umbrella chapter can't get together in person as much. It is a state. We do our Arc of Taste. We have a policy committee. By day, I am a food policy guy. Spend a lot of my time trying to make it so that good, clean, and fair food is the norm, is permitted. And I'm also a history person. So that's why I like the Arc of Taste, learning about where the food comes from. When the recording gets posted, we've sent Giselle a number of links, and you'll be able to follow and see a little bit more than we tell you today. Before I continue, I'm going to ask Joni if she'll introduce herself, and then we'll go on.
Hi, I'm Joni, and I'm in Sunnyvale, California, and part of the Slow Food South Bay chapter. And I teach cooking classes. Before COVID, it was, quite busy, and then all of a sudden got quiet. And so this online platform is now opening up doors and windows, opening up screens. So I teach groups, individuals, businesses who want to have fun with food or skill building, learn how to cook. My goal is to help you get comfortable in the kitchen so it's less decision making and more fun.
Much better, thank you. I need to get a new computer if I'm going to do more of these. That's obvious at this point. But we'll do okay today. So I've been a member of a team that has adopted a peach tree, a peach parent, for the last 4 years. Joni has been a member a couple of times. I'm going to tell you about the program, the peaches, a little bit more about the farm. But before we do that, I want you to meet the farmers. I had the chance after peach picking on Sunday to interview two of the family, Mas and Nikiko, and they did a little recording for me. So Giselle, if you would cue up the video, we can meet those folks, and then I'll come back and tell some more stories.
So it's a nice, warm, as expected in the Central Valley, summer day here in Delray, California. And we are sitting on a patio on the Masumoto family farm. We have just finished the first weekend of the annual peach picking, of which I've been on a team that has been doing this 5 years, and I am with 2 members of the Masumoto family.
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the farm.
Thank you. So we have Mas.
I'm Masumoto. I'm the old guard of the farm now. My grandparents immigrated from Japan. Were farm workers. My parents bought this farm after relocation. My dad took a huge gamble. I was born and raised here, and then gradually partnered and took over the farm, made it organic, and then Nikiko, our daughter, joined us and is a partner on the farm.
Yeah, so I'm Nikiko. I'm Yonsei, 4th generation Japanese American. So we are sitting in front of the house that my grandparents built, that my dad grew up in as a child. So these are some of the layers of meaning and family and the kind of perspective of long-term sustainability that is part of the core of who we are as a family farm. I'm getting to touch and work the same soil that my great-grandparents did. Always brings great meaning to me. And so this is part of the power that we're hoping to share with people when they eat one of our peaches or nectarines or apricots or raisins, is that they feel something more than just a transaction, right? We're hoping that the story of the land, the story of the people who work the land get communicated through flavor, and that makes us, rather than a seller and a buyer, we hope that people feel like they're in relationship with us.
There's a sense of legacy here on the farm that we want to be part of this operation, where it's not just about what's the newest thing, what's the most progressive thing, but it's something that combines a sense of history, a sense of the past, a sense of the place is in each fruit that we grow, each organic nectarine, organic peach, organic apricot, organic raisin, that it's all part of this, both the past and the present and the future at the same time.
So behind us is the stone fruit orchard, and you have quite a variety of peaches, all heirloom varieties, not typical supermarket varieties. And we just picked Elberta peaches and Legrand nectarines. Can you tell us a little bit about the varieties?
The Legrand, I grew up with the Legrand. It was this classic nectarine variety that was developed probably post-war, around the 1950s-ish, and it became the standard of the industry. Beautiful, full-size nectarine with deep, deep flavor. And like many of these heirloom varieties, it fell out of favor because it didn't have the shelf life and it wasn't this perfect red nectarine with it. But we've kept it, we sustained it, and one way we've sustained it is we have this adoption where people could adopt the tree and be part of the farm for at least a few days, harvesting this fruit and understanding where the food comes from, not in just a cerebral sense, but in a literal sense, that they could pick a fruit and know that, gee, when I pick a fruit, I can't put it back. So there's this sense of ownership that's with it, too. And Nikiko could describe the Elberta.
Yeah, the Elberta peaches are another heirloom variety, and the Elberta were really the inspiration for this Adopt a Tree program of bringing people to the farm, because the Elberta are really hard to ship. They're very delicate, and so instead of discontinuing growing a peach like this, we thought, what is another model? What is another structure? What is another relationship that we can have with eaters? And so 16 years ago, we started the Adopt a Tree program, and we're still going and still learning, and especially this year in the age of COVID, adapting to what is needed to keep people safe, but also to continue our essential work that we take very seriously, the responsibility of growing food. And for me personally, during the challenge of this living through a global pandemic, the trees have really reminded me over and over and over again, despite the darkness, despite the uncertainty, the earth is still feeding us. The earth is still growing nourishment. So it's our honor and our job to transfer, to help steward that nourishment to people. And so that's what we're doing.
And one of the dynamics of this whole coronavirus phase era pandemic that we're in is understanding the role of food in our lives and also understanding the food chain. That it's not simply you can go to a restaurant and get food made for you by somebody else. It disrupted all that. And this year has been a real eye-opening experience for us to understand exactly how all that works. And I think people are much more aware of that. Not just the phrase, where does your food come from, but literally understanding all the hands that are involved and the dynamic of the role of essential workers, from the farm worker in the field to the truck driver to the distributor to the retail outlet. This is all part of that food chain that people tended to just sort of gloss over when they think of farm to fork. No, there's many things in between that are essential, and that's part of this sustainable organic operation that we have and we want to partner in too.
Well, we were nervous that you might have to cancel it. Of course, you would have had to find another outlet for your peaches. And so happy when you didn't and we were able to come here and see you, as we do at least every summer. It was a different experience than in the past years, but it was a real special one.
Thank you.
So thanks for hosting us, our team for the 5th year and teams all over for 16 long years now.
And again, it was an idea of the continuity and yet the idea that we are in a world of transition too. And how do we cope with the past and the present and the future?
Yeah, and we're grateful. We're very grateful. And I think this moment for me is it really takes me back to what are our values: caring for the earth, caring for each other, equity, making sure how can we push and pull and empower systems and structures that feed people equally, that treat people equally, and that transfer some of those legacies of wounds into legacies of healing. That's what's been on our minds and hearts.
Very nice.
So welcome to our farm.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
The Masumotos are not just the people who grow our peaches. They're not just farmers. They're trying to build community, and I think they've had some success at that. They are friends. They are family. And we didn't spend much time on that interview. They are such comfortable speakers that that just happened. And so I'm very grateful to them. I did want to tell you a little bit about, get my notes up here, sorry, about the programs, a little bit more than Ma said. And I want to emphasize that the Adopt a Peach program is just one of a number of things they do. They sell, not generally through grocery stores, but they have a CSA, which is usually for second quality fruit. Nikiko is the poet. It's OU Fab Fruit is for the seconds that they can't sell to the restaurants, to the specialty shops. The raisins, they don't do any picking. They do have at least 9 varieties of stone fruit because they want to be harvesting something everywhere from about Memorial Day into Labor Day, so harvesting all summer. And of course, this is a prime season, which is why they couldn't join us live this morning. So it's a diversified farm in both the business sense and in what they grow. And it's community facing in most of the ways that they do business. So as far as the fruit, the orchard behind us is 32 rows deep. There are Legrands on one end and Elbertas on the other, and they're all labeled for visitors to come to the farm. We actually had 4 small trees, not one big tree, and they all have our name under them, and they have tags that we have left over the years that we harvested this given tree in this year. But the 30 rows in between are the trees that they give to other outlets. They actually grow a lot of Suncrest peaches, which is another wonderful heirloom. It is also on Slow Food's Arc of Taste. And that one you can find certainly at Chez Panisse. if you ever get Alice Waters talking about Masumoto's, she'll tell you all about the suncrest that she looks forward to getting every summer. In past years, Jessie Cool, whom folks from the South Bay probably know from Fleet Street Cafe, has come with her restaurant staff because they want to process Elberta restaurants and keep things in stock for all winter, make jams and freeze some. So what we're going to talk about later, some of the better restaurants in California are doing exactly the same thing. And in fact, we learned a little bit from them. So Elberta is an old style eating peach. The Fay Elberta is what is actually boarded onto the arc. There are a couple of varieties of the Elberta. According to UC Davis, the Suncrest is actually an Elberta. But they are peaches with a fairly short shelf life, which is why grocery stores don't want them. They spoil. As I'm finding out, what is it now, 5 days after I pick them, blemishes are showing up. It doesn't stop you from eating them. You'll have to cut off a spot of the peach, but they're still absolutely delicious and you really don't want to lose them. The Legrand nectarine, and I can hold up a nectarine here, and an Elberta peach. So these are what we were harvesting. The Legrand is not yet on the Arc of Taste. Nikiko and I have talked about putting it there. We're going to have to find similar free time in the winter. So as I've said, she has no time to do this in the summer. They are also growing Blenheim apricots and the baby Crawford peach. Those are both fairly new crops. The apricots are just something that they're getting started in the last couple of years. I think the baby Crawfords, probably they don't have much in the way of sale yet, but you can see that they're focusing on all of these great old varieties, these varieties that we have either already described for protection or want to describe. So you heard Moss say they started the Adopt a Peach program 16 years ago. It is so popular that if you aren't on a team, you'll have competition in getting on one. Every January for the last 4 years, and I did it 1 year before then, we write a letter to Nikiko talking about why we would make good peach parents. We want to adopt a tree. And returning parents will normally get accepted. So the competition for new teams is really tough. A lot of people want to become adoptees. What is actually being adoptee involved? Well, you need to form a team. You're going to have too many peaches. We have always gotten at least 400 pounds of peaches. Last year was a banner year. We got over 700 pounds. They recommend a team of 12 people. They ask you for $680 to adopt the tree for a year. Comes out to about $56 a person for somewhere between 40 and 60 pounds of peaches a person, plus the experience of being on the farm and being part of the community. Nikiko sends you emails telling you how your peach babies are doing about every month during the process. We share them, it gets us talking. You don't know exactly when you're going to go pick. You're tied to the seasonality of the food in a good way. It'll be late July or early August, depending on the heat, depending on the water, as will the quantity of peaches that you're going to get. So we're talking ahead of time. We're waiting for Nikiko to tell us by email when we're going to be able to come. We set aside a couple of Saturdays and Sundays just about this time of year, and we all try to go together. Well, actually, we split the 12 this year into 3 subgroups, so a couple go each weekend. In past years, we have had a little bit more diverse of an event. Nikiko and Moss will usually start with a group reading and some poetry, a little orientation to the farm. We always eat breakfast. Last year it was cooked by Chef Jessie Cool. And this year, of course, with COVID, it was a little bit more subdued. As we said in the video, we're a little worried about it, and yet it was just so nice to be there. They also spread out the picking from 2 to 3 days to 6 this year. So the farm felt a little more empty. You didn't have as many people to socialize with. You socialized in masks, but those you were talking with, you had a little more time because people weren't quite so busy. So Giselle, can you put up the quick slideshow, and I can tell a couple more stories over that, and then we'll get into the food part of it?
Yep, definitely. Give me one moment. Okay. Oopsies. Try to. Sorry, this is a.
It's okay, we're live.
Yeah.
One little pause after another, we get there.
I wanted to be full view and my key command isn't working. Play slideshow, there we go. All right.
All right, so.
Here we go, all right.
So if you advance it, I'll quickly describe what we're seeing. So in place of an orientation this year, we got a little bit of artwork given to us out the car window. So we were greeted very careful. The health department was involved with thermometers and written orientation. Those of us who've done this 4 or 5 years, it's old hat. The next slide shows the map, and they are customized. So, or actually there's one I didn't photograph customized, tells you where your trees are. Ours are by the P and the E in the leftward peaches. Where it says orchards in the middle, those are the 30 rows of Suncrest and other varieties. So go ahead with the next one. So they have everything set up before we get there. They have buckets, boxes with little plastic inserts. I'll show you one in a little while before I pass the mic. Ladders. The trees aren't terribly tall, but you can't get to the top without a ladder. So this is 5 of us who were the first part of our 2020 peach picking team. Go ahead. There you go. So over the last 4 years, we've developed a little bit of a style where you pick into the buckets and then you sort. As I've mentioned, you need to keep your eyes on these peaches. They don't last very long. So we sort by size, but we also sort by ripeness. We take all the ripe ones because Team 2 that's going this Sunday won't be able to get anything if, or they won't be there. They'll have fallen on the ground, the really ripe ones. There's a bit of an effort in trying to take just the right amount for us and leave for our teammates coming the next week. We've always done very well with that in the past couple of years. So next. So it's a good sized ladder, the tree's up top. We got 24 boxes for 5 of us plus 1 person who couldn't come, so 4 boxes apiece. It's a mixture of peaches and nectarines. Go ahead. Have to eat one under the tree, one that's particularly ripe. So the next 2 photos are from a previous year, unmasked. But so we tended to be no more than a team of 6. The team is a partnership. We have folks from Transition Palo Alto, Slow Food South Bay, and Eco Farm. That's why I'm holding a sign that says Transition Palo Alto. Why don't you give one more? That's Nikiko in former years doing an introduction. It's a 2-year-old photo and I'm trying to figure out what she's holding. Sorry about that. So now we're into processing. Hi, Barbara. So why don't we stop here? Let's take any non-food questions, any question about the farm or the Adopt a Peach, and then we'll come back to food processing with my last few slides and then over to Joni.
There are no questions in the Q&A box, so if anybody has a question, throw it in there quickly. One thing I would like to ask you in here is to talk a little bit about how a program like this is really sort of symbiotic and beneficial to everyone involved, like how it really supports the farm and is a program that especially in the knowledge that they don't last long. Why is a program like this really helpful for a farm like that that needs to get their product basically to a kitchen and on the table fairly quickly for it to be used and enjoyed?
Well, so one thing you've heard in the time of COVID is about food shortages of various kinds and farmers who are suffering, and there's a lot of truth to that. But the farmers who are doing direct sales of various kinds are generally doing very well. You've probably heard that CSA subscription is up. I rejoined one after a couple of years. I'm thrilled with it, although I know in a more normal time, I might not be able to keep it up because I'll be on the road and the food will be at home spoiling while I'm away. The idea of that direct relationship lets you do some of these pivots. It also gets you some fiercely loyal customers. There are people who've been doing this peach picking for 16 years. As we said, the stores don't really want it. They bruise pretty easy. They are amazingly delicious. He wants to keep growing them, but he has to find an alternative moss. He has to find an alternative outlet. If he went to the stores, they would capture the market. His name would probably be off the peach. And in a year like this, he would just have to cross his fingers and hope. Whereas a direct marketer with different kinds of sales, he's in much more control and he gets a bigger share of the dollar.
Monica's adding in the chat that the farmers are going to get paid for this product no matter what. So I think that's also the CSA model, is that if you're kind of making that contribution, making that payment before the harvest season comes, that it becomes more of a shared risk or a shared responsibility, which is a great way to support farmers. Great, thanks for that, Peter. And we have a question from Mary, wondering how the Masumotos came about with the idea of the Adopt a Tree program. So how the program idea was born.
They really want the connection to the clients. They want you to visit the farm. I think some of that, boy, I wish we could ask Moss. He's used to talking to the public. If you haven't read his books, especially Epitaph for a Peach and 4 Seasons of the Peach, he's a wonderful writer. They're beautiful books. You should read them just for enjoyment, not to learn so much about peaches or food, but just to have a good read. And the idea that he often goes to bookstores or he goes out to reading and he meets people who are passionate about his food. We're doing direct sales of various kinds. But if you're selling to a restaurant, you're meeting one buyer. If you're selling to a CSA, the drops can be unmanned. If you're inviting people on the farm every summer, you're really getting to know people. It's a party. It's part of your family, your extended family. And I know he likes that. Whether that was his original intention or whether that was something that grew out of it over time, we'd have to ask him.
Great, thank you. And one more question from Diane. If you have the same tree year over year, just wondering what happens if your tree has a particularly low yield in one year or another? Do you keep with the same tree? Are you actually adopting a tree?
Well, not only do we adopt a tree, but we've had, in the 4 years that I've been doing it with this team, we've had 2, 3, or 4 trees, depending. They go to a lot of trouble for equity, and they go and gauge what a tree looks like, and they assign them to you based on trying to balance out. Just as we balance out among our 12 team members, they balance out among the 50 or so teams. And they do a remarkable job, and you feel the fairness involved. This was a light year for peaches. It was a banner year for nectarines. We got about 3 boxes of peaches, and they said that isn't enough. So they had declared some of LeGrand nectarines community trees. Go get a box of nectarines each off of the tree to supplement out, because we want you to have 4 boxes. And that was just cool. So no, we don't find out which tree is actually ours until we show up on the farm and look at the map.
Great, thank you. All right, and if it sounds good to you, we'll move on to the processing piece. You feel free to add more questions about any of that during this part. It's not sort of closed to farm or adopted tree program questions, but we'll go ahead and move into that.
Can you put the last slides back up?
Give me one more second. All right, there you go.
So this is actually last summer. We always have a perfect peach processing party. It's very minor this year. The Perfect Peach is their cookbook, and I'll show you on the last slide a photo of that. I highly recommend that book as well. So this is not part of the farms program, but it's an addition that we do. We get together and process peaches. We make a variety of things. Barbara spooning peach jam. Peach ginger is one of my favorite flavors, into the jars. Go ahead and next one. There's the peach jam cooking. That probably should have been the first photo. Next one. Make a few dozen jars. It's a lot of work to make that many jars of jam, and when you're done, you're in awe of the number of jars in front of you, but you look over at the boxes and you still have a lot of peaches left. You need a diversity of peach outlets. You need to share them. You need to freeze them. You need to eat them raw. You need to make a bunch of things. Go ahead with the next one. Sort of an artsy shot. This is something I was introduced to last year. This is a Dutch baby, a peach pancake. Go ahead with the next one. So this is the Masumoto's cookbook. We always make their peach gazpacho, and I gave a link to Giselle to put on the webpage for the peach gazpacho. So if you don't buy the book, you can get that anyway, but all the other recipes, you should buy the book. And then the last slide is a photo of Moss's book that I highly recommend. So Joni and I, for lunch, have just decided that we're gonna try something new, a dessert that I've heard about that's very slow food, that I've never made before, but we have the ingredients, a syllabub, a peach syllabub. And the basic ingredients to that are fruit, whipped cream, and white wine. So that'll be part of our lunch. At this point, I'm gonna pass the mic over to Joni, and she's gonna tell you about some other neat things to do with peaches.
Thank you, Peter. Hi. All right, so a peach cake I thought would be the easiest simple thing to do, and I was thinking, for me, I like to start off with ones. Okay, so I'm gonna do 1 peach. And what do I need with that? Flour. So 1 cup of almond flour. And then I need a sweetener. And I thought, okay, 1 tablespoon of honey and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Add some more flavor into it. And then 1 egg, and then the baking soda to help put some air and lift into it. So I have here already chopped up 1 peach. And hold on a second, I gotta give you a sneak preview to where I'm going. Look at this, a peach cake. Yes, it's divine. These are gluten-free, right? And I use this mold. I highly recommend this if you like to have those toasted edges, you know, like the brownie muffin tops, you know. Each piece has its own browned edges, so fantastic flavor right there. So I have here the chopped peach, and I already had salted it. 1 pinch of salt and 1 pinch of baking soda. And I just wanted to start sweating the peaches, bring out some of the juice. And I have 1 egg right here. Gonna stir this, and vanilla. And this is the way I measure, as eyeballing. That was 1 teaspoon. And now I want to add in 1 tablespoon of honey. So just keeping, there we go. Honey, you could do brown sugar. I like the flavor of the honey. Honey has a tartness to it. It's acidic and sweet. So it adds a little bit of tart to the cake. All right, so I have that. And now my almond flour, 1 cup of almond flour. Here, stirring. So you just want to mix this until very well mixed, right? And then put this into just put this into the form and bake at 350 for 20 minutes. Check it every 10 minutes though, 10 minutes, halfway mark, just check it. And it's just 20 minutes in the oven at 350 degrees. I had to test, could I use the same batter for making pancakes? And yes, it works. Just a dollop of this in a skillet, and you have the same recipe making pancakes as well. And did you know that the scrambled pancakes is a thing? So if it's not holding all that well together, your pancake, you can, chop it up like you would a scrambled eggs, and you have scrambled pancakes. Really divine. For garnish, you can serve the cake, with whipped cream, yogurt, chocolate syrup, chocolate shavings. Let's see, almonds. Being that there's almond flour here, it's nice to have the almonds on the outside as a garnish, toasted almonds. Oh, I have used this recipe with hazelnut flour. And then of course, garnish with toasted hazelnuts. This original recipe, the recipe originally came from a cake that I found online, and that'll be in the show notes. It's using oranges, but the oranges you would poach for 1 hour. The whole orange would go in the water in a saucepan, covered for 1 hour. And then you cut that open and just remove the seeds, and you blend it, put it in a food processor, and you blend it with the same ingredients, and it makes this fabulous orange almond cake. Now, I want to just point out the almond flour does not absorb as much liquid as regular cake flour, regular wheat flour. And so this will be more moist than if you use regular cake flour. Cake flour is going to absorb more of the moisture, and so it's going to be more cakey. This is just, it's sweet, and the texture. In my recipe, I have that you chop half the peach in small bite-sized pieces, and the other half mince, so it's small, like pulp. And so that way, when you bite into the cake, and you can see the peach chunks on this one. I can see it. Just bite into that, and it's just, you get that explosion of being back on the orchard. So, any questions?
Well, Diane has asked, right before you mentioned the nuts, I think has asked if you've tried adding nuts or chocolate chips. So maybe you can tell us if you have, which ones you've tried, or maybe the chocolate question.
Oh, what was the chocolate question?
If you've ever tried adding chocolate chips to the cake.
I only have had the chocolate on the outside, as a syrup or chocolate shavings, but certainly put in chocolate chips. Yes, sure, definitely. Oh, and I have put in chopped almonds inside in the batter. That worked. I was thinking about currants too. I thought that would be really good. Yes, I think raisin would be too big and then that would take away from the peach experience.
Great. And in thinking about chocolate chips, those little toffee chips come to mind as maybe a really nice flavor pair for the peach.
Yes.
I agree. Using the batter in a muffin tin, what would be do you think that would work?
Oh, perfect. Oh, that's a great idea, because you can see that this is similar to what a muffin tin would be. And you can do the mini muffins, you could do the larger muffins. Yes, definitely.
Probably testing to making sure you're not over baking or under baking it, because the size of your of pod will change how long it needs.
Yeah, in my recipe I have it makes an 8x8 baking pan if you want to do just a regular cake. 1 peach, 1 cup of almonds, almond flour, would make, you know, an 8x8. But if you want to do a larger one, it works. Just double everything and it works. 2 peaches, 2 cups of almond meal, 2 eggs. Yeah, it works. Just to double it.
Yeah, and I love that. I feel like this is a great sort of summer bounty approach where you've kept the recipe pretty simple. Baking so often can feel like sort of an intimidating science, but I think that it can turn out really well if you do it a little bit intuitively, right? Like you just kind of stick with some basics, you're gonna get a cake and it will likely be delicious. Susanna has asked if other flavors of extract, if you might use other flavors of extract if you don't have vanilla, or maybe what you might kind of get that flavor profile from if you don't have vanilla.
Right. Ginger. Ginger paste, I guess it would be, or almond extract. A little bit goes a long way. Amaretto. That's nice.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
And I want to give you a tip on this, that this cake freezes very well.
Excellent.
So for me, I'm gonna individually wrap these and then put them in a and freeze them as, you know, individual pieces, and then put them into a Ziploc bag, and then I can take out one at a time.
Perfect. I was just gonna say the perfect size for freezing, you know, a little serving size.
Yeah.
And yes, great for baking with kids, Marie. This is a simple recipe, and you can just sample all the peaches along the way. That's at least what I would do. Mary, you have asked if you'll get these recipes demonstrated here, and yes, we're going to send a follow-up email to all of those that have registered for this session that will have all sorts of links to the books and Joni's recipe and a few other things that you might like to follow up with. Joni, I want to send it back to you because I think I may have interrupted you there.
No. Oh,
Great.
yes, I do have one more thought to share. I have made this recipe with Meyer lemons. Remember what I said about the oranges and to boil them for that 1 hour? And so that's what I did with the Meyer lemons. I boiled them for the 1 hour and then cut them open, remove the seeds and that middle inner core of the white pith. But otherwise, I just blended it up. I needed a little bit more honey though, because there is a little bit more tartness, more bitterness from the Meyer lemons, using lemons instead of the oranges. And so I needed the honey, and the honey works because honey is acidic. It's a sweet, sour sweetener. So it balances that out. And when I first started making this cake several years ago, I've made 200 of these cakes, by the way. It's not this one specifically, but with the oranges. And at first I thought too much honey, it was too sweet. So I reduced it too far, and the bitterness of the orange came up. And so that way, oh, right, I know this, honey, yeah, sweet, sour. That sourness is needed to balance out that bitter of the orange.
So when I proposed this to Joni, I asked her what she thought about adapting the orange cake recipe to peaches. And she was immediately excited by it. The first attempt included boiling the peaches, and so much of the flavor ended up in the peach water.
We drank the peach water.
So she has created this recipe in the last 3 weeks or so, iteratively practicing with peaches, not Masumoto peaches until the last few days, but other good peaches that she could get. It is better, of course, with hand-picked Masumoto peaches.
Yeah, yeah.
I also
want to share a peach cobbler is so easy. Almond flour, just a quarter cup of the almond flour. This morning for breakfast, it was a quarter cup of the almond flour, a quarter cup of, I use a gluten-free flour. It's rice and tapioca starch mixed, something. A teaspoon of honey. See, I go with ones. And then 1 tablespoon of butter, and you just mash all that up and then drop it over your chopped peaches, and into the oven it goes, and it was really good.
Excellent. It sounds like a great breakfast. Speaking of flour, Mary's asked if you could use regular wheat flour if you were not gluten-free or not worried about gluten-free, or maybe didn't have any almond flour. And would you have to add more moisture and or change the baking time?
Yes, you could use regular flour. I don't know the ratio of what liquid you would need to balance that out, but you would need more liquid. You could use peach juice, you know, or orange juice instead of a milk, you know, instead of cream, or use cream, milk. You could use yogurt, but gosh, you know, I don't know what the ratio would be.
Great. I also want to say that I think the combination of almond and peach is delicious. So it might be less of a choice about gluten and more just about that flavor combination. It's really tasty. But I would recommend maybe finding a simple cake recipe to see what kind of moisture element is going in there if you wanted to use wheat flour. I'm going to add a question here, and that is, can I make, if I have chopped my peaches and frozen them, can I make this cake with those frozen peaches?
Sure, I would imagine so. It may be more liquidy in the batter. So you would add in a little bit more almond flour. But you can see, I'm going to show you this. It's pretty thick. You know, this is pretty thick. So you may, the peaches being frozen is going to release more of the liquid, you know, from the pulp is going to release more liquid as it freezes. And then when it thaws, you'll have, you know, be more wet, more liquid on the outside rather than in.
Right.
So I'm thinking that that's going to require a little bit more almond flour then to balance that out. But you can just, if it looks too liquidy, then add in some of almond flour.
Use your senses.
Yeah.
Great. Excellent. I love freezing peaches, and you both referenced like the sort of volume of peaches that comes from this project. So just nice to explore what we can do if we freeze them. I know that I end up freezing a lot because you have to kind of use a lot quickly. I love cooking them down almost to like a jam or sort of a compote, and then throwing that over a pancake or ice cream or anything delicious. Because there's so much moisture, they cook down really nicely.
Yeah. One of my favorite seasonings is, you know, pumpkin pie spice blend, but better than that is Chinese 5-spice, which is basically a pumpkin pie spice blend, but they add in black pepper. And that black pepper just gives a warmth and more complex flavors, robust complexity that I just love. So Chinese 5-spice.
Excellent. I'll keep an eye out for that. All right, and we have one question from Jean. So I'm going to toss it a little bit back to the farm and getting the peaches. For those of us living outside the Bay Area, is it possible to get peaches shipped? And Jean, you mentioned that you'd love to support all farms, and you're not sure if that defeats the slow food principle of eating local. I want to quickly mention here before I hand it back over to you guys is a big part of that slow food principle is, and a big part of eating local is seasonality. And so I think it's really important, and maybe now during COVID, we're seeing more than ever before, people really looking around them and saying, well, what's in season here right now? So maybe you have peaches in season where you are, or maybe you don't, and you should have peaches if you want them. So maybe we can talk a little bit about, you know, what it means to support a farm by sort of tracking the seasonality of the produce and making those connections and going to those farms or CSAs or what have you to procure the things that are local and seasonal to you, and then how to go beyond that to get products that may not be available in your area, like peaches.
So the Masumotos, as a rule, don't ship, and their varieties don't do well shipping. That's part of the charm, is they taste amazing fresh, but they don't last very long. They said they'll have an exception for large lots within the state of California shipped UPS overnight, but they did warn the person who asked that question that the shipping would be many times the cost of the peaches, and there's no guarantee that some of them won't be bruised. There are a lot of places in the country that grow peaches. I've driven the last 3 years to Denver for Slow Food Nations. I'm disappointed I'm not getting to go to Denver this year, but Giselle and Felix and company are going to lead us in creating virtual Slow Food Nations online. So more things like this from a lot more people, we hope. Stay tuned for that. I overnighted in Grand Junction, Colorado, which has a little suburb called Palisade, which is amazingly proud of their peaches. And, well, I may not know any farmer there as well, but I have to stop and get Palisade peaches if I'm in Western Colorado. Of course, Georgia and South Carolina are famous for their peaches. Find out who grows them locally, or what else if you have apricots or plums or another stone fruit. And really use what's in your neighborhood. Find that history, that connection, that relationship to a farm. I think it makes the food taste so much better.
Yeah, I think that there's nothing like walking away from a farm with a box of whatever fruit or vegetable or meat product or cheese that you have. I absolutely believe, and it's sort of scientifically true, that that experience will carry into your flavor preference and your flavor experience. And it's so fresh that you really can't beat the freshness of a thing like that. Peter, I know that you can speak to this as well, but a big part of the Arc of Taste and publishing this list and exposing these varieties is that when we start to ask for and demand for varieties, then farmers have reason to start growing them. So I think that the more we talk about the varieties we love and pay attention to, one of my great wishes for the world of food is to start naming varieties on things. You know, I saw tangerine juice in a wine shop the other day that was great for cocktails, this, that, and the other. And I was like, I want to know what kind of tangerine this is. And I believe that if we start naming them, we'll start seeing more demand and then more availability. So if you have a peach farm near you, or you have, say, in my town, we have a brewery, and the head brewer, who happens to be my husband, has gone to local orchards and said, we would like to put this variety of cherry into our beer. And so then the farmers have reason to grow it, because without demand, they can't grow it because they can't sell it. So I think it's really great to go to your farmer's market and talk to them about the varieties you love and the varieties you would love to see and eat. And then you'll start seeing more of it popping up. So this is a big part of what we do with the Arc of Taste, is just try to increase exposure and awareness to then increase demand, which will then increase supply and availability. And then, of course, biodiversity and the variety in question staying in cultivation or being cultivated more.
Exactly. For domestic produce, wild is a little bit different, but for anything that's domestic, we say, and Joni created a great poster for us a couple of years ago about eat it to save it. Exactly what you just said, Giselle. And my CSA is labeling the varieties of everything that's in the box. And one of our Slow Food California colleagues from Sacramento, who's a co-founder of the Slow Beer Initiative, went and partnered with a farm to make to get enough elephant heart plums, another Arc of Taste fruit, and then the brewery in Sacramento to make an elephant heart plum beer. The brewers and other processors often want to do this, but they need to be told. They need to know that they're going to have sales. And so we need to speak up.
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned these brewers and processors because they have, as happened here with this local brewery, they have the potential to motivate a farmer to put in 2 acres or 1 acre or a half an acre, like large amounts of a product, and then they can guarantee they'll buy it at harvest season. So this is what the farmer needs to know. Well, if I'm going to put an acre of this particular kind of cherry in that happens to be a lower yield cherry, I need to know you're going to buy it in July. And also, you know, I think at farmers markets we can go and say, I love the Elberta peach. Like, have you ever tried to grow it? The more farmers hear from individuals, the more motivation they have. But I think this is a good point, Peter. The larger buyers, they have major buying power, which makes it possible for farmers. For the Plant a Seed campaign next year, we're working with seed growers that are going to cultivate seeds for the campaign that they would not otherwise be cultivating, because we're able to buy so much of it.
Right.
And there's a guarantee there. So talk to your brewers, talk to your your local producers making jam or whatever it is, and start talking to farmers about the varieties you love, and ask what varieties you love. If Lisa in here says, ask for the name at a farmer's market. What kind of squash is this? And then tell your friends about it. I think the more we talk about it, the more we'll see it. And I know that my experience has been that many people don't understand even that there are multiple varieties of a peach. There's hundreds, you know, there were thousands, but now probably at some point, and now there's many, but we have to demand it and consume it in order for it to kind of stick around. So I can't wait to try an Elberta peach the next time I'm in your area. I have a lot of loved ones down there, so I'll keep an eye out for that next time I'm able to visit.
At this time of year.
This time of year, so hopefully a year from now will be a great time. My brother and his family live in Pleasanton, so I'll be there as soon as I can. This has been wonderful, and I'm always really glad to have the opportunity to have a conversation about a variety of anything, because I think that it leads really nicely into a larger conversation about the importance of biodiversity and how we can save it and increase it. So Peter and Joni, if there's anything else you'd like to add, I'm seeing that it's noon. Excuse me for, I went in a little depth there, but if there's anything that you'd like to add before we go, before we all go off and look for peaches and make peach cake, I'll send it over to you. But thank you so much for all of this. Lots of positive comments in the chat. Lots of folks, you know, maybe before you go, call out your favorite peach variety in here and what you intend to make after you take off today. Peter and Joni, thank you so much for joining us and for this great project and telling us about this great project. I think highlighting ways that farms can be supported and be creative, and then how we can support that creativity and innovation and pivoting is really important, especially right now.
Thanks for hosting us, Giselle. And do send us the chat box so that we can answer any questions we missed in your follow-up email. It's been a pleasure.
Goodbye.
All right, bye everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We've got neighbor peaches called out here, so enjoy your peaches, whatever your favorite is, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much, Peter and Joni.